Would you eat food if you secretly feared it might be poisoned? Comment yes or no before you hear this story. This tale isn't just about what was served at the table, but about secrets too deadly to ignore. Subscribe now, because every story here brings you closer to the hidden side of human nature. Agatha Christie presents Yellow Iris. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Call. Poirot sat comfortably in his armchair, his feet stretched toward the electric radiator glowing with steady warmth. The tidy red bars, lined in perfect order, gave him quiet satisfaction. Such mechanical neatness appealed to his sense of symmetry. A coal fire, he often reflected, was too chaotic. Ash, smoke, and sparks never behaved with proper discipline. An electric heater, by contrast, was orderly, obedient, and reliable. His calm reflection was suddenly disturbed by the sharp ring of the telephone. Poirot glanced at his watch. It was nearly 11:30. Who would seek his attention at such an hour? Perhaps, he thought, it was nothing more than a misdialed number. Then again, his imagination teased him with a dramatic possibility. A wealthy newspaper magnate, found lifeless in the library of his grand estate, a rare orchid in his hand and some cryptic note pinned to his chest. Poirot smiled faintly at the absurdity of his own thoughts as he rose to answer. He lifted the receiver. Almost at once a voice spoke, a woman's voice, soft yet trembling, carrying with it a sense of urgency that could not be mistaken. There was breathlessness in her tone, a kind of desperation that made Poirot instantly alert. "Monsieur Poirot?" she asked, her words wavering as though fear pressed upon her. "Yes, it is I," Poirot replied, his posture straightening. "Who is speaking, madame?" The reply was strained, the words heavy with terror. "You must come at once. Please, immediately. I am in grave danger." Poirot's expression shifted to deep seriousness. His voice firm, he demanded, "Who are you? Where are you calling from?" But the woman's answer came broken and faint, as if the line itself were choking her voice. "At once? It is a matter of life. Life or—" The final word dissolved into static, and then silence. The connection had been severed. For a long moment, Poirot remained still, the receiver in his hand, his mind racing. This was no mere wrong number. A cry for help had been hurled into the night, and then cut short. Chapter 2. The Dinner Party and Its Curious Guests. The last words on the telephone had come in a breathless rush. Death. The John. A table with yellow irises. Followed by a choking gasp, and then silence. Poirot slowly placed the receiver back into its cradle, his brow furrowed in concentration. The entire exchange had been unsettling in its oddity. The urgency in the woman's voice, the cryptic mention of death, and the abrupt cutting of the line. It was no ordinary prank or accident. Something behind it carried the weight of real peril. And so, resolving to pursue the matter, Hercule Poirot set out for Jardin des Cygnes, a fashionable restaurant well known for its glittering chandeliers, lively music, and the sense of wealth and glamour it exuded. At the entrance, a familiar figure greeted him, Luigi, the portly maître d', whose impeccable dress and ingratiating smile made him as much a fixture of the restaurant as its ornate marble pillars. "A table for you tonight, Monsieur Poirot?" Luigi asked warmly. Poirot shook his head gently. "No, my good Luigi. I am merely looking for some acquaintances. Permit me to glance around a moment." His sharp eyes swept across the richly decorated dining room. Couples swirled on the dance floor, the orchestra playing a spirited tune. Yet Poirot's attention fastened on a table in the corner. It was set apart not merely by its position, but by its flowers. While every other table displayed pink tulips, This one was adorned with tall, golden yellow irises. Poirot inclined his head slightly. "Curious," he murmured aloud. "Tell me, Luigi, why is that table alone graced with yellow irises?" Luigi lifted his hands in a shrug, his expression suitably dramatic. "A special request, no doubt. Likely the favorite flowers of one of the ladies who dines there." "Ah," said Poirot softly. "And who is it that occupies this particular table?" "Mr. Barton Russell, the wealthy American," Luigi replied promptly, "a man of immense fortune and one who indulges the whims of his guests without hesitation." Poirot's gaze lingered on the irises. "Indeed," he said thoughtfully. "And yet, I recognize someone already seated there." Without further explanation, he moved delicately across the dance floor, weaving with precision among the couples until he reached the table. Though it was laid for six, only one figure sat there, slouched back in his chair, glass of champagne in hand, looking the very picture of careless despair. "Ah!" Poirot exclaimed with surprise. "If it is not my good friend, Mr. Tony Chapelle." The young man groaned theatrically. "Not Anthony, mon ami, please. Tony to my friends." He gestured dramatically to the empty chair. "Come, sit with me. If you cannot solve a crime tonight, at least help me drink to one." With a flourish, he poured another glass of champagne for Poirot. "Mon Dieu, Tony," Poirot said gently, studying his companion. "You seem in peculiar spirits. Yet, from your expression, I should say those spirits are not so very high." Tony leaned back, raising his glass. "High? I am drowning, Poirot, drowning in misery. Do you hear the music?" He tilted his head toward the orchestra. Poirot listened, catching the melancholy notes. "A song of lost love, I think," Poirot suggested. "Exactly," Tony declared. "The title, my friend, is There's Nothing Like Love for Making You Miserable. My favorite tune, by my favorite band, in my favorite restaurant. And look there." His voice softened bitterly. "My favorite girl." Poirot's eyes followed Tony's gaze to the dance floor. A striking blonde, radiant in a gown of pale silk, was moving gracefully in another man's arms. "Yes," Tony continued gloomily, "Pauline Weatherby, lovely, spirited and, alas, furious with me. 95 words of reproach from her for every 5 of my poor protests. And my 5, Poirot, were nothing but, darling, let me explain. A hopeless case." He took another swallow of champagne. "I fear I shall have to poison myself out of despair." Poirot smiled faintly. "Poison is rarely the solution, my friend. But yes, I see. Pauline Weatherby, the young and wealthy sister-in-law of Mr. Barton Russell, if I am not mistaken." Tony nodded miserably. "You know him, of course. Barton Russell, American, full of business energy and confidence. Clean-shaven, booming voice, forever talking of progress and prosperity. He is hosting this little gathering tonight." Poirot's brows lifted. "And who else will be joining us?" Tony gestured vaguely, just as the orchestra paused between songs. "Here they come now, and you may see for yourself." Introductions followed swiftly. Barton Russell himself arrived first, jovial, broad-shouldered, and beaming, his handshake firm enough to crush bone. Beside him walked Stephen Carter, a reserved, serious man whose stiff bearing revealed years of diplomatic training. Then came Señorita Lola Valdez, a celebrated South American dancer whose dark, dramatic beauty made heads turn wherever she passed. Finally, Pauline herself approached, every bit as enchanting as Tony had described, her cornflower blue eyes alight with suppressed amusement. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot," Russell exclaimed heartily. "The famous detective in our midst. A great pleasure, sir. You must join us." Tony grinned at the remark. "Unless, of course, Poirot already has an appointment." With a corpse? Or perhaps a stolen diamond? Or maybe, his voice dropped theatrically, with the Ripper of Bellagio's estate? Laughter rippled across the table, but Poirot's smile was faint. His thoughts had turned again to the yellow irises, to the strange voice on the telephone, and to the desperate warning of death. Behind this glittering company, beneath the music and the laughter, Poirot sensed something dark waiting to emerge, and he meant to uncover it. Trivia question for viewers. If you were Poirot, what detail would you find most suspicious? The mysterious yellow irises, Tony's despair over Pauline, or the cryptic phone call? Comment now. Chapter 3. The Shadow of the Path. Poirot, my friend, said Reuben with a sly smile, do you ever truly switch off? Are you not always on duty, even now? Poirot lifted his brows in feigned indignation. Mais non. Must I always be the detective? Can I not, for once, enjoy a quiet evening without suspicion clinging to me? Tony Chappelle leaned back, smirking. I doubt you could relax even if you tried. For instance, Carter here, he gestured toward the quiet journalist, has brought the latest word from the United Nations. They say the world stands on the brink of war. If those stolen plans aren't returned, conflict could break out before tomorrow's sunrise. Pauline Weatherby, elegant and cool, turned her head and cut him short with a sharp glance. Really, Tony? Must you always play the clown? Forgive me, Pauline, Tony muttered quickly, his bravado deflating. Poirot chuckled softly. Mademoiselle, you are very severe, but I cannot fault you. There is wisdom in disliking those who jest at serious matters. I have no patience for fools, she replied firmly. Then I must tread carefully, Poirot said with a mischievous twinkle. From now on, I shall speak only of grave matters. Tell me, mademoiselle, do you see me as a kind of English Sherlock Holmes? Do you believe I truly have powers of deduction? The corners of Pauline's mouth softened into the faintest of smiles. Can you really read people so cleverly? Very well then, try it. Poirot leaned forward, studying her intently. I believe your favorite flowers are yellow irises. Pauline laughed lightly, shaking her head. Wrong, monsieur. I prefer lilies of the valley, or perhaps roses. Poirot sighed theatrically. Alas, a failure, but let us see if I might succeed on my second attempt. He pressed his fingertips together. This very evening, not so long ago, you made a telephone call. Pauline's eyes flickered just for an instant, betraying surprise before she caught herself. Yes, she admitted with a little laugh. I did make a call, but only after you arrived. Non, non, Poirot said gently, his gaze unwavering. It was before you joined us at the table, was it not? For the briefest moment she hesitated, then clapped her hands with mock applause. You are quite right again, Monsieur Poirot. I made the call the moment I entered the club. Indeed, Poirot murmured. His eyes sharpened, though his tone remained light. And tell me, did the person's name begin with a P, or perhaps an H? Pauline's laughter rang out, airy and deflective. Neither, I'm afraid. I simply rang my maid Louise to remind her to post some very important letters I had forgotten. Poirot spread his hands in surrender. Then I am defeated entirely. At that moment, the band struck up a lively waltz. Tony leaned toward Pauline with eager eyes. What about a dance then? Not just now, she said coolly, shaking her head. Tony collapsed dramatically back into his chair. Ah, what a tragedy, he sighed, as though addressing the entire universe. Poirot, meanwhile, turned his attention to the woman beside him, the radiant Senora Lola Valdez. Madame, he said gallantly, I dare not ask you to dance. I am far too old-fashioned." Her dark eyes sparkled as she leaned closer. "Nonsense, Monsieur Poirot. You are not old. You still have youth in your face, and your hair has not yet turned white." Poirot winced slightly at her observation, but masked it with a polite smile. Across the table, the booming voice of Barton Russell carried over the music. "Pauline, I won't take no for an answer this time. You'll dance with me. This is a waltz, and it's the only one I can manage without stepping on someone's feet." Pauline laughed and agreed, allowing him to lead her gracefully to the floor. "Good girl, Pauline," Barton said with a grin as they joined the dancers. Tony tipped his chair back, watching them go, then turned lazily toward the quiet figure of Stephen Carter, who had spoken barely a word all evening. "Silent as a grave, aren't you, Carter? Don't you ever loosen up?" Carter's reply was curt. "I'm not sure I follow." "Oh, come now, old boy," Tony said, mimicking Carter's clipped tone. "Surely you can manage a drink, if not a conversation." He pushed a glass toward him. "Go on, have some champagne." Carter pushed it back firmly. "No, thank you." "Then I'll drink it myself," Tony declared, pouring another with exaggerated flourish. Carter sighed, his eyes scanning the room as though searching for escape. "Excuse me, I need to speak with someone." Without further word, he stood and disappeared into the crowd. Poirot's gaze followed him thoughtfully, his little grey cells stirring. Something in the air tonight was wrong. Beneath the laughter, the dancing, and the chatter, an undercurrent of tension pulsed. This gathering was no simple party, it was a puzzle. And Poirot intended to piece it together, one clue at a time. Trivia question for viewers. Do you think Pauline truly called her maid? Or was she hiding something more important? Comment yes or no. Chapter 4. The Tragedy, 4 years ago. The evening's gaiety dimmed for a moment when Stephen Carter pushed back his chair and wandered toward a nearby table. Watching him go, Tony Chappelle muttered sourly, "Seems someone ordered the laughter out of this place." His remark hung in the air, laced with gloom. At that moment, Poirot remained deep in conversation with the striking dark-haired woman at his side. His tone softened, almost conspiratorial, as he inclined toward her. "May I inquire, mademoiselle?" he asked gently. "Which flowers are dearest to you?" Lola Valdez raised a perfectly arched brow, amusement flickering in her eyes. "And why would you wish to know that, monsieur?" "Because," Poirot replied smoothly, "if ever I were to send blossoms to a lady, I would wish them to be the kind her heart cherished most." Her lips curved into a playful smile. "Very gallant of you. Very well, I'll confess. I have always adored crimson carnations or roses of the deepest red. Bold, passionate flowers. Don't you agree?" "Ah, magnifique," murmured Poirot approvingly. "And what of yellow irises?" Lola's expression shifted. She wrinkled her nose. "No, never. Yellow flowers feel unlucky, quite against my temperament." "How perceptive," Poirot answered softly. He studied her for a moment, eyes sharp beneath their apparent warmth, then added casually, "Tell me, since you arrived this evening, did you perhaps use the telephone?" Her dark eyes widened briefly. "The telephone? No, certainly not. Why ask such a thing?" Poirot gave a little shrug, as though brushing away the significance. "Curiosity only. It is my nature." She laughed, revealing dazzling white teeth. "Non, monsieur, not curiosity. You are dangerous." "Dangerous?" Poirot lifted his hands with mock despair. "No, mademoiselle, you misunderstand. I am harmless, though perhaps useful in moments of peril." But Lola shook her head, still smiling. "No, no, I insist, you are dangerous." Before Poirot could respond, Tony Chappelle sprang from his brooding silence, suddenly animated. "Lola, what do you say to a dance? Something lively, a swoop and dip, eh?" Her eyes sparkled as she rose to join him. "Of course, since Monsieur Poirot lacks the courage." Tony slipped an arm around her waist and called teasingly over his shoulder as they departed. "Stay there and brood on your secrets, old chap." Poirot watched them retreat, fingers gently stroking his mustache. "Ah, but it is true what you say," he murmured under his breath. "Profound indeed." For several moments he sat in thought, then raised one finger. Instantly Luigi, the maitre d', appeared beside him, his round face eager. "Always at your service, monsieur." Poirot's tone dropped, confidential. "I require some information. Tell me, which of the ladies at this table have used the telephone tonight?" Luigi frowned in recollection. "Let me think. Mademoiselle Weatherby, the young lady in white. She telephoned almost immediately upon arriving. While she was in the cloakroom, another lady, Madame Valdez, emerged and made a call of her own." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "So the Signora did indeed place a call, before she even joined us here?" "Precisely, monsieur. No others." "Excellent." Poirot leaned back, fingertips pressed together in thought. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Tonight, above all nights, I must remain alert. Something is about to occur, and I cannot yet divine what." Luigi inclined his head politely. "If I may be of service." Poirot gestured faintly for discretion. Luigi melted away just as Carter returned to the table. Poirot's watchful eyes flicked instantly toward him. "Still no word of the others, Mr. Carter?" he asked quietly. Carter hesitated. "No, not yet." "You know Mr. Barton Russell well, do you not?" Poirot pressed. "Yes, for quite some time," Carter replied evenly. "And his sister-in-law, Miss Weatherby, she is rather charming, n'est-ce pas?" Carter's expression remained neutral. "A pretty girl, yes. I know her fairly well." "Quite," Poirot murmured, his tone faintly amused. He repeated the word, watching Carter carefully. But before the Englishman could respond, the music ended, and the remaining guests drifted back to their seats. Barton Russell, tall and imposing, signaled a waiter briskly. "Another bottle of champagne," he ordered. Rising with glass in hand, his voice carried above the hum of the restaurant. "My friends, this little gathering tonight has a deeper purpose. As you can see, I reserved 6 places, yet only 5 of us sit here. That empty chair is no accident." A ripple of unease passed through the table. Poirot's brows rose slightly. Russell's voice grew solemn. "That chair is for a lady, in whose honor this supper is held. My wife Iris, who died exactly 4 years ago tonight." Gasps and startled movements stirred the group. Russell raised his glass. "I ask you all to drink with me, to her memory." "Iris," murmured Poirot, his gaze darting to the arrangement of yellow irises at the table's center. Russell noticed the look and gave the smallest of nods. One by one, the others raised their glasses, the name whispered uncomfortably among them. "Iris," Russell continued, his words heavy. "Perhaps it seems odd to mark the anniversary of a death with supper in such a place, but I have reasons you will understand soon enough." His eyes flicked briefly to Poirot before returning to the group. 4 years ago, this very night, there was another supper party, this time in New York. Present were my wife and myself, Mr. Stephen Carter, then attached to the embassy, young Mr. Tony Chappelle, who had been our house guest, and Signora Valdez, whose dancing at the time dazzled the whole city. Poirot's gaze shifted around the table, noting each name as Russell spoke. "And lastly," Russell said, his voice softening, "my sister, Pauline. She was only 16 then, This gathering had been arranged as a treat for her. Pauline's face blanched. "Yes, I remember," she whispered, her voice trembling. Russell nodded gently. "Indeed you do, my dear." He inhaled deeply, then turned his eyes to Poirot. "On that night, monsieur, tragedy struck. The cabaret began, the lights dimmed, and a single spotlight illuminated the stage. When the lights returned," his voice dropped to a near whisper, "my wife Iris was dead." Chapter 5. When Shadows Return. Poirot leaned forward, his sharp eyes fixed on Barton Russell, who spoke with a weight that seemed to drag the very air around him. His voice was low, deliberate, each word etched with pain. "That evening, my wife," Russell began, his fingers trembling against the polished table. His complexion had paled, but his jaw remained tight with resolve. "She collapsed suddenly. By the time anyone reached her, she was gone, dead, stone cold at the table." A heavy silence swept over the group, pressing down like a suffocating fog. Russell swallowed hard before continuing. They later found potassium cyanide traces in her glass and an empty packet of the poison hidden away inside her handbag. His hand clenched into a fist, and with a sharp breath he added, "The official ruling was suicide." Poirot inclined his head slowly, acknowledging the account. "That was the accepted conclusion, monsieur, was it not?" Russell's palm struck the table with sudden force. "Yes, that's what they told me, what the police believed, that she had reason enough to take her own life, a reason that seemed plausible to them." His voice dropped, heavy with bitterness. "And I, like a fool, accepted their judgment. What choice did I have?" For a long moment, he sat rigid, the glass trembling in his grip. Then, almost violently, he shook his head. "But the truth gnawed at me. For 4 years I've lived with it, brooded over it, dissected it 1,000 times, and I will not believe Iris killed herself." His voice grew sharper, darker. "No, she was murdered." The words fell like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled around the table. Tony Chappelle half rose from his seat, staring in disbelief. "Surely not—" "Quiet, Tony," Russell snapped, his tone cutting like a blade. His eyes swept the group with an unsettling intensity. "Someone at that table, someone that night, slipped the poison into her bag under cover of the shadows." He leaned forward, his face hardened, his voice a near whisper. "And I think I know who it was. I will uncover the truth." Lola Valdez gave a short, incredulous laugh, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her unease. "This is madness. Why would anyone want to harm Iris? You've gone mad yourself." She shoved her chair back as if to leave, but before she could move, a sudden roll of drums crashed through the air. Russell's expression didn't flinch. He merely turned his gaze toward the stage. "The cabaret," he muttered, his voice flat, almost rehearsed. "We'll continue later. Stay here, all of you." Rising smoothly from his chair, he strode into the shadows, vanishing among the darkened edges of the restaurant. Carter exhaled in disbelief. "Utterly extraordinary. The man's unhinged." "He's gone completely mad," Lola hissed, though her words were more strained than mocking. Turner folded his arms, scowling. "If you ask me, I'd walk out this very moment." But Pauline Weatherby's voice wavered, quiet but firm. "No, don't you feel it? The atmosphere, the tension, it's all happening again, just like that night." Poirot tilted his head toward her. "What troubles you, mademoiselle?" Her hands trembled as she clasped them tightly in her lap. The same dread, the same air of doom. "It's horrible." "Courage," Poirot murmured gently, though his own gaze had sharpened. Lola stiffened suddenly, her eyes darting around. "Listen," she cried. "Do you hear it? That song, the same song they played in New York that night. The haunting melody spilled into the room. The lights dimmed further until a single spotlight burst into life, capturing the center of the floor. Out of the shadows stepped a woman, tall, commanding, her dark skin glowing beneath the beam. Her eyes burned with deep emotion, and when she smiled, her teeth gleamed like polished ivory. Then she began to sing. Her voice was rich, deep, and sorrowful, vibrating with a timeless ache that wrapped itself around the audience. Each lyric carried both bitterness and longing, every word like velvet smoke unfurling through the air. The audience was transfixed. Even the waiters froze mid-service, their trays momentarily forgotten. Glasses refilled silently, champagne hissed faintly from uncorked bottles, but no one dared turn away. The song seemed to bind them in place. Her voice swelled, aching with grief, then fell to a whisper of despair, and finally, after the last lingering note trembled and dissolved into the heavy air, the spell shattered. Applause erupted, wild and feverish, crashing over the room like a storm. At that very instant, Russell slipped back into his seat, calm and composed, as if nothing had passed. "She's magnificent," Tony muttered in astonishment, shaking his head. But before another word could be spoken, a sharp, piercing cry broke through the applause. Lola's voice, shrill and frantic, rang out across the room. "Look, trivia question. Do you think Russell already knows the identity of the killer, or is he deliberately playing a dangerous game to draw the culprit out?" Chapter 6. Poirot's Investigation and the Shattering Revelation. A sudden, horrified gasp rippled across the table, freezing every guest in place. Pauline Weatherby's body had collapsed forward, her cheek pressed against the pristine white tablecloth, her wineglass lying just beyond her lifeless fingers. For several moments, silence gripped the room, thick, suffocating, and heavy with disbelief. Then, Lola Valder's sharp cry broke the stillness. "She's dead! Dead, just like Iris! Just like Iris in New York!" Chaos threatened to erupt, voices rising in panic, but Poirot shot up from his chair, raising a commanding hand. His voice, calm yet unyielding, cut through the mounting hysteria. "Stand back, mes amis. Remain exactly where you are." He bent over Pauline's form with delicate precision, lifting her hand as though afraid it might break in his grasp. His fingertips pressed lightly against her wrist, searching for a flicker of life. The others held their breath, dread etched across every face. Slowly, Poirot straightened, his expression solemn and grave. "Yes," he said softly, "she is gone." Lola staggered back, pressing a trembling hand to her lips, while Barton Russell sat rigid in his chair, his complexion drained to an ashen grey. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "It's just like Iris. Pauline suspected something that night. She told me she had doubts, but she wasn't sure. And now she's been silenced." His fists clenched on the table. "We must call the police. Oh God, Pauline." Poirot's sharp gaze snapped toward the table. "Her glass," he demanded suddenly. "Where is it?" Someone pushed it toward him, and he lifted it with care. He inhaled, his brow tightening as he recognized the faint, bitter scent. "Cyanide," he murmured, his voice grave. "The same as before, the same cruel method." A collective shiver ran through the group. Poirot reached for Pauline's handbag, fingers moving swiftly as he examined its contents. Then he stopped, his eyes narrowing. Slowly his gaze turned toward Barton Russell. "You do not believe this was suicide, monsieur?" Poirot asked gently. Russell's head snapped up, fury blazing in his eyes. "Suicide! Never!" Poirot remained silent, his mind whirring, before his attention drifted across the table once more. "The lights," he whispered. "They returned too quickly. The murderer had no chance to plant false evidence." Carter leaned forward, his tone clipped and sharp. Then that means the poison is still on someone here." His eyes darted toward Lola. "You," he accused harshly. "Back in New York, everyone knew how close you were to Russell, and Latin women are famously jealous." Lola's eyes blazed with outrage. "Lies! Filthy, slanderous lies! And let me correct you, Senor Carter, I am not Argentine, I am Peruvian." Her voice rose in a furious torrent of Spanish. "Silence!" Poirot's voice cracked like a whip, instantly restoring order. Russell exhaled shakily. "We must search everyone." But Poirot shook his head with quiet certainty. "No, that will not be necessary." A murmur of confusion rippled through the group. Carter narrowed his eyes. "And why not?" Poirot's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Because, monsieur, I do not see merely with my eyes, I observe with my little grey cells." The room stilled. Poirot's gaze shifted, slow and deliberate, until it came to rest on Carter. "Monsieur," he said evenly, "perhaps you would be so kind as to produce the packet from your breast pocket." Carter stiffened. "There's nothing in my pocket," he snapped. Before anyone could move, Tony Chappelle leaned forward with a swift motion, plucking a small packet from Carter's jacket. He held it high for all to see. Poirot took it, unfolded the paper with care, and read the words aloud in a voice that rang with finality. "Potassium cyanide." A stunned silence followed. Russell's breath came in ragged bursts. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the table edge. "I always suspected you," he whispered hoarsely, his eyes burning into Carter's pale, speechless face. "Iris loved you. She wanted to escape with you. But you were too cowardly, too afraid of scandal, too concerned for your precious reputation. So you poisoned her. And now you've done it again." His voice cracked with fury, his fists trembling. Poirot lifted a hand. "Enough," he commanded firmly. His sharp gaze scanned the room, then settled on Tony. "My friend, when I arrived tonight, you jested that I had come in search of crime. And you see," his eyes glimmered with quiet triumph, "you were not entirely wrong." Trivia. Question for viewers. If you were sitting at Poirot's table, would you have trusted your instincts, or waited for Poirot to reveal the truth? Chapter 7. The Truth Unmasked. "It was not to witness a crime that I came here tonight," Poirot declared firmly, his voice echoing in the tense silence of the dining room. "It was to stop one. And, messieurs et mesdames, I have succeeded." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The air was thick with disbelief, eyes darting from Poirot to the seemingly lifeless figure of Pauline Weatherby. Then, with a faint laugh, Pauline stirred. Slowly she pushed herself up, her voice shaky, yet touched with irony. "Behold the resurrection of Pauline," she murmured. Gasps rippled through the group. Lola clutched her chest in shock, while Tony all but leapt from his chair, crying out in pure relief, "Pauline! Thank God!" At the far end of the table, Barton Russell's face drained of color. His lips parted, stammering, I don't understand." Poirot's gaze was sharp as glass. "No, monsieur, you do understand. Allow me to make it plain for everyone else. Your plan—" He paused deliberately, his eyes boring into Russell's. "Has failed." Russell swallowed, his throat dry. "My plan?" he repeated weakly. "Yes, your plan," Poirot continued, his tone measured but merciless. "Let us consider. When the lights were extinguished, who was the only person at this table with a flawless alibi? Not seated, not in sight, but conveniently excused on some pretense. The room was deathly quiet as Poirot pressed on. "It was you, Monsieur Russell. You left under the guise of speaking with the orchestra, but in truth, you moved like a shadow. You disguised yourself as a waiter, circling the table unseen. You poured the champagne, topping glasses here and there, but in one glass you added more than wine, cyanide, and as you leaned across another guest, you planted the half-empty packet in poor Carter's pocket, ensuring suspicion would fall neatly elsewhere." A shudder passed through the room. Carter himself gave a strangled cry, realization dawning on his pale face. "It is a simple trick," Poirot said softly, almost sorrowfully, "to vanish in darkness while all eyes are fixed elsewhere. And what safer setting to kill than in the very heart of a crowd where no one thinks to look?" Russell's mask cracked. His hands trembled against the linen as he hissed, "Why would I ever wish Pauline dead?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with pitiless clarity. "Because, monsieur, her life was an obstacle to your survival. Your late wife entrusted you with her younger sister's inheritance. At 21, or upon her marriage, you would be forced to account for every pound you managed on her behalf. And I suspect, monsieur, that you had not managed it wisely." The silence deepened, horror dawning in every face. Poirot's voice grew quieter, but each word struck like a hammer. "You speculated with her fortune, did you not? You gambled and lost. With Pauline so near her majority, the truth could no longer be concealed. Only her death could save you from ruin." Russell's breathing came ragged now, his eyes darting desperately, as if searching for some exit, some denial that might hold. But Poirot did not relent. "I do not know if your wife's own tragic death was another of your devices, or if her end merely gave you the idea for this night's cruel performance. What I do know," Poirot concluded, his voice like cold steel, "is that you intended to kill again tonight. But, Monsieur Russell, the little grey cells have spoken, and you shall not succeed." Russell's lips quivered, but no words came. Around him, silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint trembling of his hands upon the tablecloth. Trivia question for you. If you were in Poirot's place, would you have revealed the truth during the dinner in front of everyone, or waited until later in private? Yes or no? Chapter 8. The Aftermath and Moving Forward. Poirot's voice was calm, yet edged with authority as he delivered his judgment. "What is certain, mademoiselle, is that this evening you have been guilty of attempted murder. Whether the law shall pursue you for it, that decision lies not with me, but with Miss Pauline." Pauline, who had been silent until now, straightened in her chair. For a moment her expression was unreadable, then she spoke in a low, deliberate tone. "No," she said firmly. "I want no scandal. Let him leave. Leave this house, leave this country. I never wish to see him again." Poirot regarded her steadily before giving a small nod. He then turned to Barton Russell. "Then I suggest, monsieur, you take her advice and depart quickly, and I warn you, be careful with your future choices." Russell's face twisted with rage. His fists clenched as though he wished to strike out, but instead he spat his words like venom. "To hell with you, you interfering little Belgian jackanapes!" With that, he shoved his chair back, stormed from the room, and slammed the door behind him. The tension that had strangled the air seemed to loosen. Several guests exhaled in relief. Pauline released a long, shaky breath before turning to Poirot, wonder softening her eyes. "Monsieur Poirot, you were extraordinary tonight." He inclined his head with a modest smile. "Non, mademoiselle. It was you who was extraordinary, to pour away the champagne, to feign death with such conviction. Your performance was impeccable." A faint shiver ran through her. "You make me uneasy, monsieur. You knew too much. Tell me, was it you who guessed that I made the telephone call?" Poirot's eyes gleamed knowingly. "It was you, was it not?" Pauline hesitated, then gave the slightest nod. "Yes, but I didn't even know why at first. I only felt dread. Barton said this party was to honor Iris's death. He was so strange, so elated about it. I couldn't shake the feeling something dreadful was about to happen. I didn't know what, but I had to act, so I called you." Her fingers tugged nervously at her sleeve. "I thought, if I sounded desperate, if I made it sound like my life was in danger, it might intrigue you, and you would come." Poirot chuckled softly, his mustache twitching with amusement. "Ah, so you wove a little drama to lure Hercule Poirot into your net, eh? And yet, there was something in the voice. The words were contrived, yes, but the fear, the fear was real." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "And I quickly realized, mademoiselle, that only two people could have known about the yellow irises on the table, yourself or Monsieur Russell. That, combined with the curious fact that he reserved a table for 6 when only 5 were expected, gave me much to consider." Pauline nodded slowly. "I overheard him ordering the irises earlier, and when I saw the place set for an extra guest, I feared the worst." At that moment, Stephen Carter rose from his seat. His tone was calm, yet weighted. "Monsieur Poirot, I owe you a debt. Tonight could have ended very differently without your presence. Forgive me, but I must take my leave. This evening has been unsettling." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked out. Pauline's eyes followed him, dark with bitterness. "I loathe him," she whispered. "I've always believed it was because of him that Iris killed herself. Or perhaps Barton was the one who destroyed her. Oh, everything about it is hateful." Poirot leaned forward gently. "Let the past rest, mademoiselle. Do not bind yourself to it. Think of the present and what is still to come." Pauline sighed, as though releasing a weight she had carried for too long. "Yes, perhaps you're right." Poirot's gaze shifted then to Lola Valdez, the glamorous singer who had been watching the scene unfold with keen interest. A playful smile curved his lips. "Señora, as the night wears on, I find my courage growing. If I were to request a dance, would you grant me that honor?" Lola's dark eyes sparkled with delight. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, I insist upon it. You are, as they say, the cat's whiskers." With a theatrical sweep, she rose and slipped her arm into his. Together they glided toward the dance floor, leaving behind the last traces of tension. At the table, Tony leaned toward Pauline, the flickering candlelight softening his features. "My darling," he murmured. She closed her eyes, then opened them with a half laugh, half sigh. "Oh, Tony, I've been such a firebrand, spiteful, temperamental, impossible." He chuckled warmly. "Ah, but love does that to us all. It unsettles the mind, drives us to folly." She smiled faintly. "It can make us foolish, reckless, even destructive." He touched her hand lightly. "And yet, there's nothing quite like love." Her breath trembled as she whispered back, "No, there's nothing like love." Trivia question for viewers. Why do you think Agatha Christie chose yellow irises as the symbolic flower in this story? Was it simply a decorative choice, or could it represent something deeper about memory, mourning, or deception? Chapter by chapter, analysis of Agatha Christie's Yellow Iris. Chapter 1. A Call in the Night. Poirot receives a cryptic phone call urging him to attend a dinner at the Hotel Jardin des Cygnes. The voice refuses to give details but insists his presence is vital. He senses danger, yet curiosity and duty compel him to accept. What we learn: danger often whispers rather than shouts. The faintest signals may carry the greatest weight. Theme: intuition is a guide worth trusting. Viewer: question: would you attend a dinner if a stranger warned you it could change everything? Chapter 2: The Glittering Table. The dining room is lavish, yet the atmosphere feels staged. Yellow irises dominate the table, arranged almost theatrically. Barton Russell, the host, introduces his guests with a brittle cheer. Each guest wears a mask of composure, but Poirot notices unease behind the polite laughter. What we learn: luxury can be a disguise for dread. Elegance may cover unease. Theme: beauty is sometimes the mask of menace. Viewer: question: if you walked into a room and instantly felt something was off, would you trust that feeling? Chapter 3: Whispers of the Past. Poirot realizes the dinner is not new, but a deliberate repetition. 2 years earlier, Russell's wife Iris died at a near-identical table under similar circumstances. The recreation is meant to provoke, or to trap. What we learn: the past will demand recognition until its secrets are faced. Theme: memory is a stage on which truth insists on being replayed. Viewer: question: do you think reliving the past can bring justice or only more danger? Chapter 4: Uneasy Conversations. As food and wine are served, the guests talk in clipped tones. Pauline fidgets nervously. Stephen Carter tries to charm. Lola Valdez hides anxiety behind forced laughter. Poirot listens silently, noting tremors in voices and fleeting glances that betray more than words. What we learn: lies live in the pauses between sentences, not just in the words themselves. Theme: human behavior betrays more truth than speech. Viewer question: when you suspect someone is lying, what gives them away first, their words or their face? Chapter 5: The Toast of Shadows. A toast is raised, glasses clink, and laughter grows louder, but the mood feels brittle. Poirot studies the table as if it were a stage, the yellow irises watching like silent witnesses, the guests moving like actors in a sinister play. Beneath the laughter runs a current of dread. What we learn: even joy can be staged. Laughter sometimes hides fear. Theme: theatricality can cloak truth until reality breaks through. Viewer: question: at a tense gathering, would you go along with the act or challenge the mood? Chapter 6: Darkness and a Cry. Suddenly the lights go out. The dining hall plunges into darkness, and in the stillness, a faint cry is heard. When light returns, Pauline collapses, her glass poisoned. Shock ripples through the room, guests frozen in fear, while Poirot's calm gaze fixes on the details. What we learn: chaos gives crime its best disguise. Theme: darkness protects the guilty, but only briefly. Viewer: question: if the lights went out in a crowded room, what's the first thing you'd do? Chapter 7: Poirot's net tightens. Poirot begins his quiet dismantling of the dinner. He examines the timing of the toast, the placement of the glasses, the behavior of each guest. Every excuse falters under his logic. Barton Russell, who thought himself the director of this deadly performance, starts to lose his composure. What we learn: elaborate plans collapse under simple reasoning. Theme: truth does not need drama, it needs clarity. Viewer question: do you think the cleverest criminals are always undone by small mistakes? Chapter 8: The Bloom of Truth. Poirot unmasks Barton Russell as the true orchestrator. The dinner was his attempt to stage innocence while hiding guilt. Years ago, he poisoned his wife, Iris, and now tried to silence Pauline before suspicion reached him. The yellow irises, once symbols of beauty, become emblems of decay and betrayal. What we learn: justice cannot always be hidden. Guilt will surface despite performance. Theme: the truth, like the iris, will bloom even in poisoned soil. Viewer: question: do you believe justice always finds its way? Or can some crimes remain buried forever? Let's analyze key characters. At the center of the story is Hercule Poirot, whose sharp observation and unshakable logic slowly strip away the facade of an elegant dinner to reveal a concealed crime. The event is orchestrated by Barton Russell, the wealthy and calculating host who uses the elaborate recreation of a past tragedy to disguise his own guilt. His sister, Pauline, becomes the evening's apparent victim, a figure whose vulnerability exposes the danger woven into the gathering. Among the guests sits Stephen Carter, a man of polished charm whose easy manner masks tension and suspicion, while Lola Valdez, the lively and flamboyant woman at the table, fills the air with nervous energy that fails to hide her unease. Beyond the immediate circle looms the shadow of Iris Russell, Barton's late wife, whose mysterious death 2 years earlier is the unspoken reason for the dinner's staging. The table itself, adorned with the symbolic yellow irises, acts almost like a silent character, reminding everyone of the past while watching over the unfolding deception. In the end, yellow iris is a reminder that the past cannot be silenced by ceremony or disguise. The glitter of the dinner table, the charm of conversation, and the beauty of the flowers were all carefully staged, yet none could mask the truth that guilt had been sitting there all along. Christie shows us that evil often hides behind elegance, and that memory itself becomes a stage where deception eventually collapses. The yellow iris, delicate yet unyielding, stands as a symbol of truth blooming even in poisoned soil. Thank you for listening to this mystery retold. What do you think? Does justice always prevail, or do some crimes remain hidden? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you enjoy exploring Christie's intricate puzzles, make sure to subscribe now, because every week we dive into another story where shadows conceal secrets and reason uncovers them.